the Commodore had just come out, and that was advertised as having this, a lot of memory, and it had a sound chip, and I thought, well, that looks like something a bit more interesting than these other machines. So that's what I decided to get. One thing that people used to do at that time was, you used to look in the documentation and, get these registers, 8-bit registers, which had bit patterns to, toggle certain aspects of the sound. And sometimes you could set 2 bits and get something completely different that wasn't in the documentation. Well, there were certain things on the SID chip that you could do, like the hard sync and the ring modulation, which is something that I knew about because I'd worked with synths. There were a few other things that you could do that weren't documented, and you would just set a couple of bits and get a strange new waveform coming from it. And then I expanded it to try to use it musically, which that was quite a challenge, because with it being a non-maskable interrupt, there was only a certain, short range you could do with it to change the actual pitch of what you were getting out of it. I had a little keyboard that was portable, so I could put it under my arm if I was watching the TV, Not that I spent a lot of time watching TV, but if I was watching TV and I, suddenly thought of something, I could just, have a quick little play, and then I'd go to the room, my other room next door, write down the ideas. So I always had this thing with us most of the time. It was an MT-31 or something, like a little Casio thing that only had a few sounds on it. And my other keyboards that I had were all at the gig that I used to do. So I mean, there was there was a piano DX7 and a Korg polysynth and all the rest of the stuff there. So, but the only thing I had at home was this little portable keyboard. So I used to, sketch ideas out on that. And then most of the creative work was actually done on the computer itself using what was called a machine code monitor, where I could actually get the code working, get a few bars of the music in there, and then I could get the hexadecimal numbers, lines like that, 1, 2, on the screen in real time, and I could change the hexadecimal numbers in real time while the music was playing, which meant that basically I could fine-tune to the nth degree what was going on with the music. So sometimes I could actually edit the music, the actual pitches in real time, but most importantly I could edit all the synthesizer, the patch parameters in real time that was going on with the chip. There was no assistant producer and all that hierarchy that there is, There was basically the programmer and the guy who owned the company who was paying the bill. And I used to say to them, well, what are you thinking? What do you want? Send me a demo and I'll look and come up with some idea, see what I think, And, 98% of the time, whatever I did, they were, perfectly thought it was, in keeping with what they wanted. Steve Wilcox, he called me up and told me to get on a train straight away. Got the 4 o'clock train was the earliest train I could get down to Birmingham. And then we spent the day in the pub, and then they went home and left me in the office at, 10 o'clock at night or something. And there was an arcade machine there which had the commando, so I had a quick listen to that. And thought, okay, I used a little bit of the motif from the arcade machine. I had my little Casio keyboard and my score paper. I always used to have this score paper like that, big, proper score paper to write stuff down, which was, I used to work that fast. It was basically some musical notation splattered with lots of hexadecimal numbers, which related to, the actual pitches and sound patches and all this stuff. About 5 o'clock in the morning, I finished all the music, started working on the sound effects, and by the time they came in at 8 o'clock, I had it all done and got the train back. I really didn't listen to much of other people's stuff at the time. I mean, I heard, Martin Galway's Rambo, and he was doing some pretty clever stuff there as well. So I was, trying to. He had a really nice vibrato routine. I was always trying to copy his vibrato because he sounded better than mine. But it was a case of, well, if I do a vibrato, how can I do it without doing a proper division? Because a division in 6502 takes a long time, and so you're trying to find a way to fudge it so you don't use a lot of processor. So there was some of that going on, but I didn't really listen to a lot of the other people's stuff because I was so busy, trying to get my own stuff done and get the invoices out and then collect the checks, which sometimes was another task in itself. The sanction, I thought, turned out pretty good. There was some good ideas in that, even though when I first did it, I thought it was garbage. And then a few people, I really did start to like it after I did it for a few weeks. There were some other things I did were pretty good. I thought some other things I thought were absolute garbage, but not everything you can do can turn out the way you want. There was the interactive loading music I did on Delta was quite weird, where you could move the joystick and change the chords and change instruments and stuff, which was a forerunner to I had a very keen interest in the 90s of interactive music. The idea of, you could play the game and the music would start to change as the action was changing. Something that's very, very difficult to do. But unfortunately, that pretty much got killed off by all the big companies because they started licensing, various famous rap artists and people like that instead. There was a move towards licensed music. Got away from that. Well, 85, 86, 87 was a real blast because there was the strange phenomena of the Zap magazine and the CompuNet and the whole culture that evolved at the time, where you get these hackers in Germany a game would come out and they would be very, very keen to send me a hacked copy of the game on the disc through the post before the game was released in the UK, with their scrolling message on the title screen with the music playing. They were very happy to do that. But it was that sense of inventiveness and that the culture that came around it was I think the most important thing.